Yeah, look, where's your hammer? Let me do that for you.
You're closer, Sam. So
I know.
it's coming.
Well, we won't hit it till the next meeting.
Okay.
We'll go ahead and start. And on the agenda today for the workshop, for a couple of us, it's going to be kind of a repeat.
Right, yeah.
Testing, is it we there?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. We have some, some changes coming to the county, and so we'll kind of turn the time, if you can, over to Chief Hammer, and kind of share what we have maybe ahead of us and some decisions to make, and as we evolve.
As we evolve. Okay, so we've been reviewing the fire district as a legal entity and trying to make sure that we get some things lined up with state code. So that's going to be most of the discussion that we have. I want to stress as we begin that there's no effort to change the current service, the current volunteers, the management of those departments, the services they provide. We're not looking at that at all. We're simply looking at the organization of the county and the fire district and the relationship that we have with those two. So I'll have Jairus run through the legal parts of it, and then when we get through that, I'll talk about some of their operational things that are going to be needing to be addressed in the future.
All right, thank you everyone for your time today, and I just did the calculations, Dave, and I'm nowhere close to 300 an hour, so I'm going to give you the under $100 an hour version.
Good.
I've got this slide presentation. I find that it at least helps me when I'm presenting on different legal issues. For one, to just kind of internalize it myself, but then two, hopefully throw some visuals and things in there that will help all of you. If you have any questions, please ask as we're going, and I'll do my best to answer that. I have Rod here who understands the fire district very well as well, who's very capable of answering questions. And to start out, the fire district currently, and I'm just going to lay it out there, is not structured the way that it should be completely. And so that's why when we've been looking at code, there's a need to create some change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out by giving a little bit of context to what a special district is, in particular a fire district, some of the ways that it is different than how we're currently operating, and that way you can have some context when I start getting into some of the legal changes, considerations that are being made, and how that's going to affect the county. So just a quick review, three main points that are important to understand with a special district. One, a district in this fire district is a separate legal entity. So the fire district, the Cache County Fire District, does not belong to Cache County. It has its own powers to sue and to be sued. Therefore, anything that the fire district does would not transfer over to any other legal entity. It also has perpetual succession, just meaning much like the government, the county government, it continues on regardless of who's guiding it. Some of the powers that special districts have, they have the power to acquire property, borrow money, and this is a really big one, levy and collect property taxes, issue bonds, invest money, and so forth, including contracting. Now, the composition of the leadership of that entity is through a board of trustees. That composition can look different, and we can get into that a little bit more, but the Board of Trustees is the legislative body of that special district, and they make the decisions on how that district is run. They establish the bylaws, they do policy, much like you all do with the county. But their purpose is to serve the fire district, and so it's a different purpose than what the county council has here, which is to serve the interests of the county. Unfortunately, there's not a lot. I'm trying to do some digging right now, reaching out to the clerk's office to see if we can get some more documents that outline how the creation happened. But basically, in 1965, the fire district was created by the then county commission. And I think the commissioners, Rod, you can correct me if I'm wrong, were the three Board of Trustees members. And so since from 1965 to then 1989, when the council became the council with the executive, those commissioners could no longer serve as the Board of Trustees. So then what happened is they created the way that the current board is established, and that is the executive with 2 appointees. And so right now it's a 3-member board, and that Board of Trustees determines everything for that district. And you'll see tonight, we've talked about this with the board just before this meeting, that that board will be, the executive is always in place as currently constituted, and then 2 additional members are appointed with advice and consent of the county council. So right now, really, the only involvement that the full county council has involving the Board of Trust or the fire district is that you all give advice and consent based on of appointments that are given by the executive for those 2 board members. One of the questions that we had to answer as we were looking into this, does the district still exist? And Taylor and I have looked into this, Rod. We've reached out to state individuals or an individual, and we agree that it does still exist. Under these Utah state code sections, each local district created before April 2007 under the law in effect at the time of the creation is declared to be valid and legal. So we answered that it is a valid and legal entity, and then we had to determine if it was an active district, and based off the requirements there, has it provided any service or otherwise operated? Yes. Received property taxes or use or other fees? It has received property taxes by way of the county, but it has, and then it's expended funds. So it does exist. And so just so you're aware that just kind of the process we had to go through to kind of get to where we're going. And so why does it matter whether the district still exists? Well, because if it doesn't exist, there's no new fire district can be created. And so there's consequences by not being able to create a new fire district if we want to maintain this fire district that still exists. And the fire district has certain criteria and things that are followed that are beneficial, like levying a tax, or could be seen beneficial. It would just take that away from the council, and now it's the fire district who actually is the entity who raises taxes for the fire district. And so that'll be a big change for the council. That means the fire district is in charge of raising the funds. And so in the future, like Rod said, the fire district is still going to operate as it is until we get all the necessary things in place, or the proper entities get it in place. But that's going to take away the county council's responsibility to raise those funds and put it onto the fire district.
So basically, there would be another line item in the property tax.
Yes. And something to be aware of, it also will put the tax to the appropriate taxpayers. So Logan is not part of the fire district. They should not be taxed for the fire district. And so this will be a tax that will go to the appropriate taxpayers, but it will still be, it will still have to be a separate line item.
Question.
Yes.
So if you go back and you're saying in the 60s you created that district, and then in 89, when the council changed, you did that. What gave the power for the county council to give and create and watch the budget and do everything else there? And going forward, if you're saying you're going to do that, and there's only 3 on the board, how does that even govern from a standpoint of watching their funds and monitoring that and everything else? I mean, creates a new staff, everything else, does it not?
Right, and those are some of the conversations that we had earlier with the Board of Trustees. One of the potential options is to continue utilizing the county, so contracting with the county and paying the county reasonable payment for those services, for the county to continue those services. I'm still trying to understand the 1989 thing, because there's such limited information. I don't know how that happened, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of that. But my best understanding is that because the previous Board of Trustees was the commissioners, when we changed, the county changed from a commission-based to council executive, that they kind of inherently had this authority to create. Really, it's the Board of Trustees is the one to make those decisions and to make that happen. So I honestly don't know how that worked out, but it is at least a legal document that and at that time probably what could have been those commissioners who were on it, and they said, hey, we can no longer do it this way because we changed our government, so we need to create this new form where there's 3 members. So one of the conversations we had with the Board of Trustees that will be assigned later today or appointed is that makeup could change, and the Board of Trustees could change that makeup. And yeah.
Have there ever been more than 3 board members?
No.
Even before, when it was the commission, there were only 3?
Right, because there were the 3 commissioners that were on that, right? And so there can be more board members, and that would be a decision of the Board of Trustees to make that determination and make that change. And it's allowable under state code.
So just a question then.
Yeah.
I should know, and I'm embarrassed that I don't. Who presently sits on the Board of Trustees? The executive, but who else?
So we realized that the advisory board was created at the beginning of the year, so January 9th, I think, the first council. So tonight, so the executive will always be on that board. That's just a permanent member of that board. And then the executive appoints, with advice and consent of the county council, 2 members. And so tonight, my understanding is that as the executive, David will go ahead and make those appointments and get your advice and consent on that. And then that board will be an official board and can move forward with these changes, these changes that are going to be happening.
Teresa, I have a question. If,
Uh-huh.
they said they could choose to contract with the county. If they didn't, that means they're gonna have to have their own payroll department, their own HR department, all that stuff, right?
Right, and
Complex.
they are smaller, so maybe they don't need a full department. They could hire one those are all considerations that the Board of Trustees, with Rod's expertise and understanding and his all of the employees under him are going to have to figure out. But it could also be contracted to a private entity. But you're right.
Who owns all the equipment now? All the vehicles, the buildings?
That's something we're going to have to figure out.
Who are the employees? So would they have to buy all that equipment from the county if they did want to do their own things?
Yeah, those are deeper legal questions that I just haven't had the capacity to figure out. That's going to be sitting down with a lot of people and something that's going to have to be figured out over time. So I can't answer that right away, but it'll be an agree. I mean, the thing is that the fire district does benefit the county. And so there could be some agreements. It'll be, and that's probably what's going to happen is the Board of Trustees is going to have to work with the county council and come to a conclusion on how that works out while looking into the state code, if any state code actually governs that. Otherwise, we're going to have to, the county will have to look at what's in the best interest and how those assets could be figured out.
Couple questions. You say this will be decided tonight, so is this already, the ball's rolling and this will happen? Or two, I'm sitting here saying, okay, what other places have done something like this? What have we learned from others who are there? What's going on? What examples do we have? Pardon me, but this is the first time I'm hearing about this, so I'm hoping there's some time to swallow and digest everything that's coming through here.
Yeah, please.
So the big thing, we're getting this rolling from the legal aspect and getting things set up the way that it should be, so that we're following state law. A lot of the questions that, essentially there's not going to be any functional changes. We're just trying to line up the language and get it in with state code. The questions you're asking, do we separate, do we have our own HR, do we have our own, who owns the property, all that kind of stuff, that's out there a ways as we really dig into what the district really is and how it operates. We've got a few things that we've looked at already as far as HR and as employees, and we might get to that in a minute, but functionally, the way the code states is the district, is it the district can use the county resources? Is that what we read? So if the district can functionally contract with the county and use county resources, including employees. So, and that's in state law. So functionally, we could keep everything the way it is, and the district just says, okay, to accomplish our needs, we're going to use the county employees, and we'll pay the county for that out of whatever tax levy has to happen to cover that.
Can I address?
That
Nolan?
just gets me deeper in the first part of the slide where it says you're a separate entity and can be sued.
Right.
But if you're using county employees, county property, county vehicles, whatever, that becomes entangled web of everything of a lawsuit.
But I just have one thought too, real quick, David. If the point is to save, not to save money, but we're trying to take care of a revenue shortfall, and to, I just want to do it in a way that's most seamless for the taxpayers, so that we're not making another, a whole nother taxing. I mean, it is going to be a taxing entity, but if the administration of it can be as seamless as possible, I think that would be ideal.
And we agree. We're not on any campaign to split and say goodbye and we're going to do our own thing. We have no desire to do that. We're simply trying to align this with state code and make sure that the management, the Board of Trustees is set up legally, that we're operating legally, and it just is all in line. Because right now it's a muddy mess, and that's what we're just trying to clean up.
So I just want to address, Nolan asked a question, and you said this was going to be resolved tonight. The only part that's going to be resolved tonight is clarifying who the members of the Board of Trustees are. We have multiple steps that we need to go through to put everything in order. But one of the first steps is ensuring that the Board of Trustees is constituted properly. And at the last meeting, I did appoint Chairman Erickson and Councilmember Buse to the Fire District Board, but it wasn't worded properly, and it needs to be worded the Board of Trustees. On the form, we had Advisory Board, which is not what they are. They're Board of Trustees. So I did present their names last time, and you guys voted to have the two of them continue serving, and they served last year on it, and then prior to that, it was Chairman Erickson and Gordon Zillis was on it before. So we've had, at least in the time that I've been here, the executive and two council members serving in this role, but maybe not completely in the way that they should have been. So does that answer that part of your question?
Yeah, but it just brought up another question. So if we look down the road far enough to say, if we're doing this, because we've talked about getting the taxes where they need to be, and I can fight that for a long time on, I understand Logan shouldn't pay taxes for a Cass County thing, but can Cass County unincorporated sustain the tax to keep you guys going?
That's a good question, and we talked about that in our fire board meeting. We talked about hiring a financial consultant to look at what it would need to be if it could be sustainable, or what level it would have to be sustainable. That's a
Because
really
to me,
good question.
that has to be answered in the beginning of things before we get down there and say, oh crap, we can't afford this.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we just discussed. We said, we don't feel like we can make any decisions till we have more data. And doing that financial analysis would give us the data, because what we talked about was, right now, or historically, it's been funded with the general levy, which gets levied against every taxpayer, every property, every parcel in the county. If we take Logan City out, that's about half of the taxable value in the county, because it's a third of the population and it's most of the businesses. So now if we're gonna only levy a fire tax on everyone else, we have half the amount of value that we're gonna levy that against. So that percentage of that levy, that mill levy, needs to probably be higher than what we would expect, because it's only half the value that we're multiplying it against.
So the district itself is all areas of the county except for Logan City. So it encompasses all the other cities.
That was established in 1965.
Right.
And that's really the reason, well, one of the reasons. There are several reasons, and I think there have been several discussions over the years, but most recently, this has been being pushed to the surface as something that needs to be addressed since the separation of the EMS services. A few years ago, the EMS services were all consolidated and was one countywide service. After they were separated and into three separate ones, with Logan doing their own thing in the North Valley and then the county handling the South Valley, people in Logan and the North Valley started complaining about their general levy tax dollars being used to provide EMS services in the south end of the valley, when that wasn't benefiting them directly, but they were paying for it. So that's something that's one of the reasons why this has been pushed to the surface and needs to be addressed. The other reason is because we just don't have the revenue. The way that we've been funding it is not the way it should be funded. The way that we've been funding it with general levy is just, it's not legal. And it has to have its own funding source if we're going to provide services in its current structure, which is one of my other questions, Jairus and Chief. The last one that you had up there, well, I don't know, the one that said how you determine that we're still a functioning entity. Right there. I think somebody could make an argument about whether or not the district has actually received property taxes or expended funds. That if we wanted to, we could maybe make an argument that this district ceased to exist long ago, or never really functioned as it was intended to, and that it just doesn't exist anymore. I'm not saying that that's the best solution. Maybe that's the simplest one, like Councilmember Goodlander was saying, but if we were to say that this just doesn't exist anymore, and it ceased to exist long ago, and it's not there anymore, and that this is just a department, how would that change from how we're operating right now? Would anything change from how we're operating right now if we just said, you know what, the district went defunct long ago, and all we have is a department, and that's all we're going to have going forward?
I don't want to answer a hypothetical that we have made a determination.
And maybe this is more of a question for the chief.
Yeah.
If we're not a district, would we be functioning any differently than we are now?
Operationally, no, I don't think we would be functioning any different than we are now. I think just based on the way the code is written and the activity required, we've done exactly what the district was originally set up for. We provided the service, the training, everything that that was done when the district was constituted is how we're acting right now. So I think it'd be hard pressed to say that we haven't done what's required or that we haven't done it.
Well, and I'm not saying that
But
it hasn't been done.
to your point,
I'm just saying, what if we said it was the county's department that did that, not the fire district that did that?
yeah, I mean, that's legal semantics to me. So, but operationally, I think we have functioned more as a department than certainly more as a department than an independent district. And that's part of why we're raising these questions is, are we a department? Are we a district? If we're a district, let's act like a district. If we're a department, let's act like a department and let's be done with it so that we're one thing or the other. But this, I'm going to take this part because it fits because I want it to now, and I'm not going to do this part because I don't like how that levels out, then it's not good for anybody.
So is this the only thing we're talking that's been a district, or are they going to come back and say the Cache County Sheriff should have been a district? Or what's going on here? How many other things are we talking about that should have been a district like this?
As far as I know, this is the only one I know of that is supposed to be a district. And the reason I posit that concept or that idea is I feel like that should be one of the potential scenarios we consider is do we just agree that the district has not been operating, that it ceased to exist, and keep operating like a department and keep funding it with general fund dollars and keep everything basically exactly how it is now.
So that's going to be a very hard position to take because our office has already taken the stance that it is a district, and we've reached out to the state. And so you would have to take that stance outside of what has already been recommended from our office. So our position is that this is a district. I don't think we can go into that hypothetical. And I call it a hypothetical because I don't think it's a reality. I don't think it exists. So I don't think it is an option. Therefore, we probably shouldn't waste our time looking into that because it's not supported by what the state statute has established. And one of the things to point out, and I've looked at what you've looked at, so to be fair to you, and that's a great question, 17B1115 is talking about it being legally constituted. 217, the one next, is talking about whether it's been active or not. And then those bring other consequences and concerns that I would have to look into further. But for purposes of today and this workshop and the fact that the board is going to be constituted this evening, that the board has taken steps as though it is active, you're going to have a hard time putting that position forward.
So what you're saying is 17B 217, those are the activities that would have needed to have occurred within the past 3 years for it. If we didn't do those for 3 years straight, it would cease to exist? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I would have to look at that more carefully.
All 3 that would have to happen?
Yes, because it's 1, 2, and 3. So A, B, and yeah.
We would have had to have done all 3 of those for the past 3 years in order to make an argument that our district is still functioning.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, when we had our budget discussions last fall, we looked at the budget that was going toward the fire district from the general fund, and at the time we had talked about if that were separated, then our budget shortfall would essentially be gone. That if there was a separate line item property tax funding the fire district, then that would remove the shortfall in the general fund to the rest of the county. And we had talked about that and discussed whether or not that's something that we should look at going forward. And so I think this is an appropriate discussion that we have right now.
Right, and to be very clear, and that's a great point, Carl. The fact is as soon as the fire district can get their tax levied, that burden is going to be off of the county council, just because the state law deems it so. So that's one reason that we're presenting this to the county council, so that you all understand that fire district, they are required to levy their own taxes. The Cache County Council cannot levy those taxes. We've had a unique situation that has happened over the years, and how it's happened, most of us don't know. I don't know that anyone knows exactly. But since we are making efforts to get it into the right space and follow code, then once that happens fully, then it will no longer be a concern for the county council as the county council.
Go back to those 3 items.
Yeah.
Right there.
Uh-huh.
I don't think we've done any of those under the name of the district.
So the fire district has operated as the Cache County Fire District since 1965. I don't think the name has changed.
No, and if you look at the last 3 years, so we have contracts with the cities that are under the name of the district to provide service. The property tax we receive, our budget has been funded from property tax, not directly from tax levy, identified as a fire district tax, but we have received property taxes to operate.
But that's what I'm saying. Under the name of the fire district? We've never levied any tax under the.
Not levied any tax under the name of the fire district. But has it received property taxes, which we've operated under?
Yeah.
Or has it received property taxes under the name of the district? And that's illegal.
We've received taxes from the Cache County to the Cache County Fire Department.
Yeah, that's the question. I have the same question. Does that mean we as a district had to levy those property taxes that we received? Or is it just that we received money that was taxes at some point?
Yeah, so I'm gonna defer. Taylor is the one who's reached out to the state counterparts. They agree that we've met these criteria. Again, I also want to point out that this is talking about an active, so we'd have to look into it further. So I can look at this closer, and see and present this at a future time.
I'm not necessarily arguing that that's the case, that none of those have happened and that the district is defunct. I'm
Right.
just saying that perhaps that's something we want to consider as a potential option. If we felt like that were true, then is potentially the simplest solution.
You say it, I would beg to differ, because then there are a multitude and a plethora of legal considerations and concerns, contracts, agreements, figuring out how things are happening. We'd have to change the name. It's just, yeah, it's both ways. It's complicated either way you go, and I think that we have to be careful when we talk about that and saying it's simpler. I think you're right, though, that getting...
In some ways it's simpler, in other ways it would be...
Yes. And honestly, has the fire district received property taxes? Yes.
It doesn't say levy, it just says receive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's...
Then I say yes.
Yeah, and when laws like this are a little more ambiguous, there is that room for interpretation. So I agree that you could interpret it that way. I just know that after we've looked at this and have taken the time to do some extensive research, talk to Rod, that we are, and talk to the state, we are comfortable saying that the county has met all 3 requirements.
Jairus, didn't you say that if we said this is not in existence, we can't make a new one?
Correct. We can't make a new fire district.
So that would leave us in a big mess funding
You can
wise.
make a special service district that provides fire service.
Yeah, okay.
You can't make a fire district.
Okay,
Right,
Different name and form.
okay.
right. And there's,
Different rules that apply to you.
right, exactly.
Well, I see this. opportunity to help us erase our budget deficit and have some specific controls given to the fire district and directions given and contracting back to the county for HR and payroll services and things like that. And we've got the executive and 2 members of the county council who serve then as the, what's the term?
Board of Trustees.
Board of Trustees.
Board of Trustees. So, so that there is, you know, some control, thus, and I don't know, I guess unless there's something that, or some reason why the district should be disbanded, I think we're better off just shoring everything up, getting all of the language in line and moving forward and letting it be a tax levying entity as it was originally designed to be.
I hear what you're saying, but in my mind, I want to see that the county can afford that because I believe that it doesn't solve our budget problems because I think some of our revenue coming into the county will switch and go to there. So as money moves, I think there's going to be a void from what the county has in its budget. So I see 2 things that concern me. One, and I agree we got to do this. I appreciate that we have a fire department, but as we look at doing that, is it financially feasible? And what is the impact to the county as we go this way? Is where I'm coming from. I don't know what others see there, but
Well, there's so many complications, like Smithfield has their own fire department, right? But their people are in the special fire district, they would get the levy for this tax, which then they would have to be negotiated with their city tax. I mean, once we set up the board of trustees, there's just a lot of things.
There is, and we've talked about that as well. You know, every city that provides its own fire service is paying for that out of their city revenue. But it is a responsibility of the fire district because the members of that area is encompassed in the district. So a city could similarly come to us and say, like Providence, we're paying Logan. We're in your fire district. Why are we paying Logan? That's your responsibility. So that stuff needs cleaned up as well. Now, what our proposal is once we get the Board of Trustees in place, then one of the first things we would like to do is get with a financial evaluation company and say, what's the best way to do this with all these options? We contract with cities. We levy taxes. Do we levy tax only in certain areas? Are there ways to levy differential taxes? You know, there's a whole bunch of questions that now follow as we start to clean this stuff up.
And legally, that's going to be the responsibility of the Board of Trustees and not the county council. And so whoever is on that Board of Trustees will have that responsibility.
I'm having a hard time seeing how we separate the county away from this when so much of the county is involved in the fire district.
Right. And that's the fortunate position, if you will, or unfortunate position of the Board of Trustees to figure that out. So it will.
Case of Snickers.
No, hopefully you're going to get to the point that I'm going
Yeah.
to make here. I'm just going to let you make it, I hope.
Okay. Let me. Hopefully there might be some questions answered as we continue. One of the unique provisions applicable to fire districts is that they can issue bonds. They can do a lot of things. It's not just that they can levy taxes. They can also charge fees and things like that. And so there are different ways in which the fire district can bring in funds to support itself and what it does, which would not require the county to pay for that through the county government. Now, something to be, so we've talked a little bit about the structure of the Board of Trustees. the way that it is constituted, up here, it fits under that subsection 1, except as provided in subsection 2, the Board of Trustees of a fire protection district may be appointed, which is how it currently is, or elected, as provided in the documents establishing the district. Now, the second point is going to be important because if the area of the fire protection district consists of all the area of a single county, excluding the area of all first and second class cities, the legislative body of that county shall constitute the Board of Trustees of the fire protection district. What this means is Logan is not part of the district and has never been a part of it. They are currently a third-class city. When they become a second-class city, the county council then automatically, because it's a shall in the state code, becomes the Board of Trustees for the fire district. So that is one way that this could potentially affect the county council. There are a lot of things that could happen that would prevent that. For example, if Smithfield wanted to withdraw from the fire district and they chose and did that, there's a process to do that, then that would then make it so that the county council is not required to be the...
Not required to be, but still could be.
Correct, right.
That becomes an issue when it comes time to issue bonds.
That's what, see this, what you just said before on that slide there, it concerns me that a 3-member board has the power to levy bonds, all those things. And that's why I personally am in favor of getting that point on number 2 there done even before, if allowed, even done before, well, that might be, hopefully that's the first action that maybe we as a Board of Trustees will do, is to bring that forth to the county council and make the county council the Board of Trustees as soon as possible. There are some big decisions in this. There is and levying taxes and all the bonding power and everything. I think a bigger board than 3 people really needs to be over that.
But if the county council is there and we decide to bond, but then we also are deciding to bond for the fire district, that seems confusing.
You have to take the one hat, you'll reconvene separately, and then hold your fire district board of trustees meeting separate from your county council meeting, or before, after, whatever's allowed.
I'd sure like to know where this has worked or how this has worked in other places too.
Yeah.
Right, and that's something that can be helpful, and I don't know who would do that, but...
There aren't any other counties in the state, but the entire county is in the fire district. Uinta County might be the closest, but like Weaver County is an independent fire district with an elected board. They're not related to any other governmental agency, so they hold annual or whatever elections to get the board of trustees. There are other different makeups of different districts, whether they're appointed or elected. Most are elected, and they're independent. But number 2, where it's everything but the Class 2 cities, has that specific thing that says the county council is the board of trustees, and nobody else in the state falls under that.
There are no counties in the state where the county council is the Board of Trustees?
Not that I'm aware of.
Are there any counties in the state where it's the county commission that's the Board of Trustees?
No, I don't think there are any other counties in the state where the entire county, other than Class 2 cities, is the fire district.
Just one district.
Yeah. And I have no idea where that law came from.
Yeah.
Must have affected somebody somewhere.
Well, help me a little bit so
Sure.
I can get a full idea of the scope of things. So in Cache County, and talking about the fire district, what cities are contracted with the district and which are not? Logan obviously is not. Are there other cities that are not contracted with the fire district for services?
So all of the cities are or a part of the fire district. But over time, so initially when the district was set up, the county was part of the contract with every city for coverage. So county had a contract with Wellsville, had a contract with Mendon, had a contract with Lewiston. And then over time, some of the cities have contracted with each other. So the initial, like Providence never really had a contract for service provided by anybody other than Logan. So the initial contract, Providence, Logan, and the fire district was one contract. Now over time, as different elected officials come in and things change, people don't know the history. So Providence contracts directly with Logan when technically they're part of the fire district, and we should be included in that. But every city's covered under our mutual aid contract. So when we contract with Wellsville to cover part of the unincorporated county, in that contract, it says anybody who contracts with the fire district also has mutual aid with every other city. So then, and even Logan, because they contract with us for service in the Canyon and in College Ward and Young Ward, they still have a mutual aid agreement with all the other cities. So everybody's, to some degree or another, contracted, but to another degree they're not. Again, something else that needs cleaned up.
So my mind goes to the fact, okay, the Cass County Council is the Board of Trustees, but 3 on our Cass County Council come from the Logan District, which is under its separate fire. That's confusing.
Yes. Well, and
Not throwing dirt on Logan, but I'm just pointing out the obvious here.
we could potentially,
We're not on the board of directors.
No,
Yeah,
but
you're not on it
if they
right
made
now.
the entire council board of trustees, we would also be,
Yeah.
but we could potentially structure it so that it's all of the council members from outside of Logan and me. Because right now it's me and 2 council members. We could say it's me and 4 council members.
isn't that a quorum?
We could, well, it would be a separate body though. It's a totally
Yeah.
separate body. So,
For different purpose.
we could structure it that way. That's one potential way we could do it, because we could say, these 3 council members don't represent that area, they're from a different area. Or we could say they represent the whole county and put them on. So,
Or
No, I want them to be miserable with me if I'm on another board.
or you could invite a mayor from the north and a mayor from the south to be on that board.
yeah,
And-
even as it is right now, it says that I appoint 2 people, and then it comes to you for advice and consent, but it doesn't say 2 council members. So even as it is right now, it could be the mayor of Smithfield and the mayor of Hiram, or a citizen from Hiram and a citizen from Smithfield. Or it could be 2 citizens from Logan even. Do they have to live within the district? It just says
State
2
law requires something
Yeah, I
about
think that would have to be within the district, so.
There. So, but that's,
They did.
so then if it says that, could we have these 3 council members on the board? If they have to live in the district?
No, so I would have to look. I think, yeah, it's weird. I'm just gonna say it's weird, and I don't have the answer, and I would have to look at it. I mean, common sense would suggest that they would be within the fire district, but yeah, and so maybe that would be a consideration to have, because if the Logan members of the council from Logan are not part of that district, and I hesitate because the reason that they're making the county council the legislative body of the county is it makes sense to, they are the ones overseeing that county. It's essentially a county function when it's at that level, but I'd have to look at that. That's a good point.
Yeah, we should do some more.
It really concerns me if you have a board of trustees that is not elected, though.
Well, yeah, especially if they're bonding and doing the taxation and everything else.
In taxes, and you've got to have elected positions in there so that they're held accountable.
It'd become like the water district.
Yeah.
They hold
Exactly.
their own
Yeah.
elections.
Yep.
I think probably the bottom two lines are, we don't do anything that disrupts anybody's service. Like, we would not want to make any decisions that make people not get service, and the least amount of dollars for people. Those two things.
Is the whole sole purpose of a district so that you align the services with who's being taxed? Is that the real reason of a district?
Generally, yes. And there's.
But that becomes very broad because,
It does, but it's also, we want to provide a service, and so that area wants a district to be able to provide that service, which is another broad point. But
I think that's a really good question, Nolan. Are you saying, why would we have a district versus just a department?
right. Because everybody points to this fact that I'm paying taxes for service, but if I really get down and separate out that service, if I'm driving through Sardine Canyon and I get a wreck, it's the county EMS that responds to me, yet I might be from Logan or Smithfield. So you start saying that's why I did a district, and then you're crossing lines with what you're trying to say you did as a district to save the taxation, just like you pointed out before. Well, those people don't want to pay taxes for fire service in the county. But nobody leaves Logan and travels to Salt Lake without going through the county. So there are some issues there, and that's where I understand it, but if they bring that up, then they need to go the rest of the way to define what's going on there, is how I'm getting there.
Yeah, and I think we could make an argument that this is a county-wide service. However, I think this was one of the services specifically delineated in state code that cannot be counted as a countywide service, that has to be treated as a municipal service. But I think we could make an argument otherwise, but we'd have to make that argument to our state legislators and have them change the law to allow us to use our general levy because we are providing this service to everyone in the county.
Also, Logan would have to agree to that.
Well,
They could lobby against it,
Yeah,
I guess. They
yeah.
could lobby against it, the
Yeah.
same legislators.
And you brought up another point, is EMS.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other layer of complexity.
You guys should have brought a Snicker and a Mountain Dew so I could swallow this
At least
easier.
some Coke.
Yeah, so.
I'll do that.
You, of course, have your diet Pepsi.
Not too late. Okay.
A lot of questions, but I think mostly it's just, this is a good starting point, and a lot of things that we need to keep.
We're getting some financial analysis that's, we can get from outside sources for multiple scenarios.
So let's say you are out there and we go to the district and we're doing that. Do you charge for services or do taxes cover every service for when you go to a certain call or anything else? Do you see what I mean there? I mean, if you end up, Wellsville Fire Department has to go up and help fight a fire on some distant lands or whatever, that's part of it because the tax levy is covering that? Or what do we start looking at there? Is there any charges for services when we start going down this district lane? Does that make sense?
It depends on how the finances are set up and what the levy covers.
Because I'd sure hate to have somebody say, oh, I ain't calling the fire department because I don't want to pay for that. And then we have an issue.
We do not want to get into a subscription.
Yeah, no.
Right.
I'll
Right.
tell you right now, I will be done. I'll walk away and retire the minute that happens.
Yeah, because I mean, we're tasked with providing safety for the county, so.
Yeah.
We are, and, to your point, if somebody's driving from, Logan to, through Sardine Canyon, the county is gonna provide services. But also Box Elder County would provide services. If something happened in Box Elder County or in Weber County, they would provide services. And so, there's simply has to be a lot of overlap to provide services where they're needed, when they're needed.
Yeah, and the fire district one, if you're talking fire, that's kind of specific to property. It's not people traveling through, the fire occurs at a home, at a field, on a mountain. It's located in a specific place within the county. So the fire district concept or the fire department concept is really applicable for the provider and the person being taxed. They're hand in hand. When you start to get into the EMS world and mobility, then it becomes a little bit different as far as provider versus recipient.
You know, Jairus, I just thought of one other thing, just 'cause my accountant brain is turning on. If you guys make a separate district and you levy your own taxes, what funding mechanism is in place if you go over budget? Like, say there's an emergency, and like, we have the general fund that we build up and can kind of balance things that way. That fire district wouldn't have, unless they had some kind of a, like, that just occurred to me, like, what would they do if they get to close to the end of the year and like, oh gosh, we're out of money?
But it'd be the same as the county, other than the county currently has some reserves. The fire district itself should build up some reserves.
Should have
to
reserves.
account for that.
Okay.
So it's a governmental agency that finances itself, and it has to live within budget.
But that is one of the problems right now, because we probably should have a written agreement right now between the district and the county, because the county is providing a lot of services for the district, like you mentioned earlier, HR services, finance services. But if we entered into that agreement today, the district can't pay us because they have zero money, because they're not levying any taxes right now. So we need to implement that agreement and make everything legal, but we also need to start getting some revenue coming in for the district so it can pay those bills.
Okay, so basically, really what has to happen is we got the whole elephant in front of us. So now we gotta
It ain't
basically take a bite at a time, but there's gonna be kind of after we get more information from, finance information, so forth, then we can kind of break it down and then put it in a kind of a sequence, basically saying, okay, here are the steps that we need to do to get this to where it should be seamless as possible. We may want to do a few things on the way rather than all at once, gradually come into it. But that's why I'm hoping, and we'll talk more about it, but I'm hoping that instead of 3 people making all of these decisions, I'm really hoping that we as a county council can make all these decisions.
I wouldn't want to be 3 who was making all those decisions.
That's why I think I was going to present your name instead of mine.
Whatever. I mean, you're talking a whole flippin' department of a scope of a lot of area.
And that's,
And talk the dollar values of what's the fire district, the equipment and everything else, personnel.
well, the budget's 4.5 million.
Yeah, you need
So,
more than 3 sitting there. Plus, if you got it, geez Louise, I don't even know all the stuff.
but see, again, these steps so that we can do it, then I'm hoping that we will evolve and we'll work through it and we'll all understand the process as we go. This is something that's gonna take probably more than a year. It might take even a couple of years of moving into this. Plus, we gotta work with all the cities, and everyone that we gradually work through to make sure that it's seamless, like you say, and it works for everybody, and that the agreements are in place, and it's gonna look like what we really need to, and by law has to be like, and can work the best. So if there's other volunteers that would like to do that on the Board of Trustees, you should.
Something comes to mind here. Venture where no man has gone before. No.
Well, and, you say, well, Logan shouldn't be, well, I think through all of this process, it isn't bad that we have 7 heads together doing all of this.
At least initially, I agree.
Because there's been
You could
7.
start out as the council.
Because there has been 7 heads that have been taxing people and participating in this for a lot of years, since 1989. And so we've been doing it together. Well, let's finish this thing and get it how it should be together. And then when it looks like at that point, and the Logan says, hey, we're on our own, we make those adjustments with the bylaws, and we move on. So it'll evolve.
And Nolan, if you would like a history of the fire district or to know anything
I do like videos. He does good videos.
Well, it's just, ever since I've been here, I've heard that, hey, I'm being taxed for something and I'm not getting. And so that's why I asked about the district. And every time I hear that, I can usually come up with an example. Well, we're all getting something out of it. It's like, I don't have a military jet parked here in Cache Valley, but I'm getting a benefit of every military jet that's out there in the United States or wherever, so.
And I hope we as a county never get that selfish amongst each other and divide, and divisive saying, you get more than me, because I have seen some good things literally be spiraled down to just being destroyed and have to work with other things because of, like one city saying, well, it was cheaper for us just to go there because they're gonna respond anyway. No, it's something that we ought to work together. And I think we've got some good working relationships with a lot of the cities. We can get it worked through, I know we can. So, other comments?
I'll just make a few last comments. So in the Board of Trustees meeting that we had for the fire district, there were some kind of do outs, some things that are the next steps. And I think David Zook, you mentioned one thing that the county could be working with the fire district on almost immediately, and that is drafting up a contract so that we have some sense of how this relationship with the fire district is gonna be over the next little bit. And it can be something simple, but and I think the contract can even recognize the fact that the benefit that's going to be provided to Cache County is the fact that these fire services are being provided, whereas and that the fire district is going to provide those. So I don't know who wants to head that up, but I think that that would be an important step from my perspective. I can help whoever does that, and I would just want the input from both bodies, someone in the county and then someone from the Board of Trustees, that we could then create a contract that can kind of govern how things operate over the next little while until we get to the next step. If there's no questions, that's all I have.
No more questions.
Okay, to be continued.